What's up? It's your boy Concert Viz 34, and we got some new equipment, more coming on the way, and I'm glad to be back on live streaming. Really wasn't had a lot going on with concerts in the past couple of years and didn't want to upgrade my equipment, but have since finally made some upgrades so that I can stream on a decent computer. And hopefully the next steps are to get a mic and get some video software so the content will get a little better. And thank you guys for joining me. It's good to be back. I did these a couple years ago before my last computer had crashed, and now want to hopefully continue this because I love doing the live streams. And the live stream format is something that I do enjoy. So today, I do want to talk and just kind of give some updated thoughts about live music 2021. I want to give some updates about just some of the mindsets of bands and how, regardless of what you think about some of the coronavirus restrictions, the mindset of a band in what they have to do in order to be able to tour, it's different than what we hope for. As far as, oh yeah, just come here. Or, hey, if you can't go to the Northeast, just come down to Florida, or come down to Texas. We're open. It's not as simple as that. And yeah, you really, all the evidence points towards most major acts not performing. As far as people that can fill up 20,000, 30,000 seat facilities, you're not going to see a lot of those big acts touring. Some will resort to the states that are really wide open and that may get to 100% capacity or already kind of technically there. But we're going to talk about some of those things tonight. And if you come in, say what up, say hi. And oops, bear with me here. And I hope to really master this streaming thing. Again, get some better quality audio, and then also eventually get the video to be better than it is now. All right, so just when we're talking about the live music in 2021, there was some updates over the last day as far as a festival that I noticed, and I retweeted it today on Twitter. Follow me at ConcertViz34 if you're not already. But there's a festival called Furnace Fest, and it's down in Alabama. And Furnace Fest is one of the few live events. There are some that are communicating with fans, but Furnace Fest is, it's a lot of alt rock, emo rock, Taking Back Sunday, Anberlin, Killswitch Engage, Under Oath. These are acts that used to frequent the Vans Warped Tour. And they have some other sort of Rockstar Energy Fest. Some of them have also done, some of the other rock events. I know there's one in Columbus, Ohio, that typically goes around every year that has some of these same acts. They've moved. This is a big step forward because they've essentially have said, hey, we want to have this thing in September. We're going to have this GA event in September, and we are going to say, hey, we're going to wait to see what the CDC has in September. So will masks be required? It depends on what the CDC is saying in September. If they are, you're going to have to come in with the mask. They have a set up area. If you don't start feeling too hot, if you think that you're sick, you can go to that area. If you have a temperature over 100 degrees, I think, they won't let you in. So they're gonna have temperature checks. They're gonna kind of wait and be fluid to see in September where the CDC's at, and then based on that allow masks or be mandated or just no masks if that's not mandated. And they're hopeful, but they're one of the few acts that doubled down. A few events that said, we're hopeful and this is how we're moving forward. Everything else is on sale, but you're not getting anything except tickets are on sale for live music. But this event, this 3-day festival, is essentially saying, hey, we are, we're gonna do this in September, barring anything crazy, barring a crazy amount of COVID cases popping up. We're gonna do this. Alabama is gonna be open up. We may have masks, we may not, but that's all we're hearing. We're only hearing right now in March 6, 2021. That's really all I'm hearing is that from this festival that they're hopeful. Everything else in the United States is to be determined. The UK, which has a smaller population than the United States, is hopeful to actually have some of these festivals back. And Live Nation over in UK is, pushing that. But in the States, we don't have really much of anything that has changed. Tickets are on sale. You have Live Nation still talking out the side of their mouth, but you don't have any major artists saying anything about if we're going to have live music from them, that we're officially going on tour. Everything's on sale, but we're not having anyone really step forward to say, yep, we got the crates, we're practicing, we're ready to go. Now, Fish's frontman, Trey Anastasio, said there's dates that he knows about, but he's not being specific. And he's, it's just very, very vague. And he didn't want to reveal anything in a recent interview. But at this time, we're waiting. We're waiting to see where the first dominoes crack. And when it comes to the Dave Matthews Band and some of the acts Pearl Jam with them, as I've said in other videos, people are talking now about, hey, all these states are opening up. But one thing you have to realize is, let's just say you're part of the Dave Matthews Band crew, right? And you're Stefan, the bassist for the Dave Matthews Band. Knowing where Stefan stands, going to a state that allows restaurants to be open areas to just be free, and masks to be not mandated, it's your choice. That conflicts with Stefan and Dave, and I'm sure the rest of the band's mindset on the coronavirus. So while some view this as a positive, that, oh, yay, they're opening up, maybe they'll do Texas, maybe they'll do Florida, maybe they'll do some of these other southern shows that are set up where the state is actually open. I think that the fact that they're open this soon is something where they won't feel comfortable there, because they still have to get food, right? They still have to go to hotels. They still have to travel through these cities and towns down south. And the idea that they're open is something that the band, even if they have the vaccine, they won't feel comfortable. And some of it comes down to the political differences, but Stefan is very strong on his idea of masks. And I don't think he'll actually go to a Texas or a Florida right now. You can say what you want to say. You can be mad, but same thing with Pearl Jam. Eddie Vedder canceled his tour before most people did, including Dave Matthews Band. I don't think Eddie Vedder is going down south. Now, you're going to have some of these acts like Kid Rock, who's not on their level, but Kid Rock's already touring in Nashville. Like he had a show in Nashville this past week, packed club or bar, and no one cared, and he didn't care. But that's few and far between. The majority of the acts that sell out these stadiums and arenas they are conscious of what's going on in these cities, and they, some of them, a lot of them don't like these mass mandates being lifted. So you can have coronavirus shots for everyone tomorrow, March 7th. Let's just say everyone automatically gets their 2 shots magically, and we still may not have shows for 2021 for the major acts. And if you notice, this festival I just mentioned, the festival is for a lot of small acts that rely on touring, that aren't as powerful. They don't sell out arenas by themselves per se. Sometimes they need a co-headliner. Sometimes they need a special hometown venue. Otherwise, they're not selling out an arena. So those are the acts that are going to tour in small. They have smaller followings, and you'll see certain acts tour, but the major acts, the majority of them won't tour. The other thing you have to consider is, from a profit standpoint, it takes about 75% capacity for everyone in the industry that's across the board of getting this concert going to break even. From the people working on stage, the lighting, the truck drivers and tour bus drivers, they need 75% of a crowd to sell to break even or turn a profit. And if you look at what's going on in New York State, here in Connecticut, you're seeing some things change because, look, it's getting rough. Like from an economy standpoint, it's getting rough for these industries, and the states are, I think, are feeling the pressure to open up. Even in Connecticut here, where we have you're seeing a Democratic governor in Ned Lamont allow for 50% outdoor crowds for sports. But even so, 50% doesn't get you to that break even. So what's the point of touring? Why are you going to bring out guitar techs and stagehands if you can't turn a profit, right? If you can't turn a profit, then it doesn't make sense to really go on tour. And that's the issue with only going to southern states too. Let's just assume Stefan doesn't care about mass mandates, and he does Texas and Florida and Alabama and goes to Mississippi. Even so, you're not going to get the profit. You're not going to get enough pay to justify hiring these people back. There's not going to be enough money flowing in. And ultimately, these artists, these big name artists, most of them don't need the money. They get money from other avenues, even during a pandemic. The merchandise, the streaming, the side businesses they have, the property they may own, the investments they have. Because the stock market went down and it's growing again. So it's like these big acts, that's the other thing too, they don't need it. If you notice, the smaller acts, the comedians, they're touring because they need the money, but these big acts, they don't need it. So we're going to have to see what happens when it comes to the coronavirus and the pandemic. And like I said, it's not about the vaccines are irrelevant. Like I said, everyone could get a vaccine tomorrow that wants it, but it's more of the other factors that are involved, because you can have the variants. We still don't know as much about them. Yes, they may not be the vaccines have had success against the variants so far, but we have a limited sample size. So it's really about these artists. What are these artists going to do? And we'll have to stay tuned for that. But it's just, I don't see Saratoga Springs, Jones Beach, even the Gorge. I know people are talking, there's rumors about Washington, maybe it open up. But, you can't have Gorge camping with half the people there. You can't have 50% Gorge camping. Right? You're going to have all, it's really going to have to be all or nothing. And I just want to talk about pits here, pit tickets. Pit tickets, I don't see pit tickets happening until 2022, outside of the GA festivals like the one I mentioned in Alabama. But a Live Nation show having a pit in 2021 is highly unlikely. Even from the band, again, the band, are they going to allow? And that creates a problem for all of the acts because you're not going to send emails to the people that have waited about a year and a half to go in the GA pit and say, sorry, your tickets are canceled. We have 50% capacity. Sorry, your tickets are canceled. We have 90% capacity, but the 10% of the pit isn't safe for COVID guidelines, even with masks. People are too close, too cluttered. Or even canceling half of the pit tickets. It's too much backlash. It's too much of a negative for these people to wait. They waited so long to then cancel their tickets and let some people in. It is a bad PR move. And that's why I think it has to be 100% or nothing. Or a tour is canceled and then they do a fall tour in select cities with new tickets on sale for 50%. That's really what I think is, that's what has to happen. They're not going to have 50% of the people that have been waiting for over a year get in and the rest of the people get an email. Can you imagine getting that email? Thank you, valued Live Nation customer. We know you wanted to see the Dave Matthews Band at Saratoga Springs Performing Arts Center, but due to the 10% restriction that the state of New York has, we have to cancel your center orchestra tickets. Can you imagine that email? I mean, that would just, and even if New York gets to 20, 30, 40, 50, they're not getting to 100% by the summer. So that's just that's not happening. It is not happening at all. So, I mean, we will have to see even what 2022 brings. But I know that we're going to get entertainment this summer. We have to, actually, whatever you feel comfortable doing, by all means, do it. I have a sense of caution even after a vaccine. I'm not going to hide in my house for the summer, but I do want to be careful because and wait to see what happens. I'm going to be monitoring the cases, but everyone has their own right, whether you don't want to take the vaccine and you want to walk outside, or if you want to still stay secluded and be safe and well and wait till 2022. It's your right. But ultimately, the people who make the shots of if it's going to happen, I don't think, it's not happening. I'm trying to say this in the most polite way and show you the reasons why, but you're not going to see some of these acts in 2021 perform. But the other thing that's going to be interesting to see is how the mid-tier acts, what they do. Are they going to go to Live Nation venues? Are they going to go to farms? Are they going to go to other drive-in type events? Some parking lots were utilized. I think about the Charlotte Motor Speedway, Atlanta Motor Speedway for Abbott Brothers and Humphreys McGee. I think about South Philly, the parking lot complex with the Link and the Wells Fargo Center and Citizens Bank Park. All those, they use that for Dark Star Orchestra, some other musical acts. But they opened up that parking lot and put a stage up there. I'm interested to see how the mid-tier acts tour. Can Live Nation work out something to get some of the acts socially distant, right? Because if you have an amphitheater here in Hartford, Connecticut that holds 7,500 people in the actual amphitheater, and then there's a lawn that has enough space for 25,000 people. Do you put 10,000 people, between the lawn and the seating, socially distanced, and have a mid-tier act just to get some sort of business, right? Maybe you don't turn on all the lights. You have half the amount of bathrooms open. You only have half of the parking attendants. But do you have a Live Nation venue that's a large scale venue convert itself to a mid-tier venue? Do you have arenas that are going to do that? That's going to be a question. because you have farms and other hilly areas and parks that may try to get people back. So does Live Nation try to compete with those by sucking up their venue fees and cutting their concession and cutting their staff? Maybe you only get 50% of the staff working for the summer, but hey, that's better than 100% of people unemployed. I think that's an interesting thing. And I think it would be smart for Live Nation to try to do that, try to work out. All right, Humphreys McGee would never go to the Xfinity Theater and sell it out. But can you have Humphreys McGee do a socially distant concert in the summer? And again, you cut your staff. You have it 50% staff. You have people socially distant. You know, I think it would be in Live Nation's best interest to use SPAC in Jones Beach in other venues and just get 10,000 people in, 5,000 people in, and have a smaller tier concert there with half of the amount of electricity, half of the amount of food and concession and all that stuff, and just use the venue because you're paying property taxes on it, right? These venues are still being shut down. They cost money to keep safe, to keep maintained, to plow the snow, to make sure everything is intact. Check after floods for a riverbend to make sure everything is okay. Did anything get flooded from the spring floods? These are important things to take a look at. But I think that Live Nation should make itself competitive to try to open up some of its venues for smaller time acts, but use the bigger stage with social distance to get some business, to get people in and out there. I think it would be important to do so. And we'll have to see what happens. But the challenge with music is the sports are doing fine because of the TV revenue. There's no way conceptually in this current age for music to go live on TV and get TV revenue. That you can replay certain concerts on music channels, but that's not really as lucrative as live sports. And that's why you see, if you compare and contrast, these live sports are seamlessly having people come in because you can have 10% capacity and you already are making money off of the TV revenue. I mean, the Miami Marlins, I've been to a Miami Marlins game. No one's there, but the TV contract is so lucrative that they just get 5,000, 3,000, 1,500 people, and those 1,500 people buy a couple beers, buy some food. The Marlins were already profiting and having a business make money with limited amount of fans showing up. So sports is totally different, and we've seen the drastic differences where the concerts have had to shut down on a large scale. The big major professional, like the Major League of Concerts, has shut down, but sports keeps going on. They're getting fans back. They didn't even need fans, right? They literally had the NBA Finals at Disney Wide World of Sports. And yes, they lost a lot of money in ticket revenue, and viewership was slightly impacted. It's showing, studies are showing, and the ratings are showing that part of the reason we watch sports is because we like the crowd or our cousins at the game. But at the same time, sports is in a much different place than the music. The music needs a 75% rate of selling out. It needs a 75% of the crowd to be there in order to break even or turn a profit. Where sports, you can make a profit and have no one in the stands for an entire season. Theoretically, if you do everything right, you cut your contracts, maybe you don't sign certain people, and you get some lower scale talent with a couple stars, and you can turn a profit. I mean, the Marlins have done that. The Tampa Bay Rays have done that, right? there's examples of that in sports, but in music, you have to have it. The live experience is everything, even if it's the same show every night. Being there is the thing. So we'll have to see what happens on that end. And I really hope, I feel for the people in the industry that don't have jobs right now and that are struggling. And I think that part of the reason it's not looking good for the live shows this year from major acts is because in order to pay everyone, you need that capacity. But, we shall see, and I'll have to listen back to this and see how it goes, and hopefully we can get some more people on next week. Get the Saturday. Oh, now people are coming in. We got 3 people. Who's in here? Come on, hit up the chat if you're in here. I was just about to wrap up, but I'm trying to see who's in here. I don't know if you guys are able to chat. Should be able to chat. Oh, Mike D, new listener. Well, hey, thank you for popping in. Really appreciate it, and I'm hoping to get. If you're new, I used to do these Saturday night streams when we had a lot more things to talk about in the music world, and then you just found me about a week ago. All right, and then we have D&B Mamas down in Florida. And but Mike D, thank you for checking in, and thank you for listening. I hope you enjoy the content, and I'm hope to have more content, especially as the summer hits in the fall, and there'll be music. I just hope that I'm able to get to the music here in Connecticut safely and well. D&B Mamas out in Florida, and Mike D, what sort of music do you like? Or what sort of music do you listen to? If you've been following me, interested to know. I know D&B Mamas, I know, or Leia down in Florida. I know the music she listens to, but I don't know what sort of music. And I know, and I guess D&B Mamas, just to go with Florida, I think one of the misconceptions I've heard about Florida is depending on where you go, Florida is not fully open. Okay, so folk music and piano rock, D&B. Okay. Very, very cool. So D&B for 20 years. Yeah, so just to give you a backstory with D&B for me, here in Connecticut, I regret not being so big into Dave Matthews Band for going to physical shows. And one of the things with me is I lived here in Hartford, Connecticut, and every year, people who didn't even listen to D&B. Oh, that's okay. But up here in Connecticut, in Hartford, so in the greater Hartford area, there's not much to do. We had the Whalers. I actually went to the last Whalers game when I was 6.5. But the Whalers left, and all we have is the Meadows, or the Xfinity Center now, but it's in the northern end of Hartford. That's all we have. So concerts are the thing here in the summertime, because Dave Matthews Band concerts was a phenomenon here, to the point where they had 3 nights for a couple years here in Hartford. It was the thing to go to, even if you didn't like D&B. I mean, I was a little So I'm 30. So I was, at the turn of the century, I was still, elementary school, middle school. In 2000, 2001, I went to middle school. But like older kids, they were going to D&B shows just for the girls, right? Just for the party, just for the fun. I mean, the tailgates in Hartford, because there's nothing to do, there's literally nothing to really do in the summer except go to people just would go to the tailgate. And I was never allowed down there as a middle schooler and even early high school. I never was allowed to go down there because my parents knew there was riots. And then that was around 2000. There's riots a couple of years, and it's still to this day, if you go to a tailgate in Hartford, it's just, people just go for the tailgate. And the thing is, the tailgate isn't just in the lots by the venue. There's lots towards Hartford that people are literally partying at. It's like college football. It's like going to a Clemson football game in Hartford, because that's all we have. Concerts is the only thing where you get a bunch of people. We have police that monitor everything, and they don't really tell people to stop drinking. But kids would go down there at 15 and 16 years old and get trashed. Take mommy and daddy's car down there, of all different sort of incomes. But you had some of these rich kids taking mommy and daddy's BMW down to the Meadows at 16, 17 years old getting trashed. And there were 13 and 14-year-olds with them in the lawn getting trashed, getting high, So that's the culture. But I never went to Dave Matthews Band shows because the people who went to these shows were rich, preppy snobs or jerks. So I knew, I had heard the popular hits of D&B at the turn of the century. I had heard their music. Maybe 96, 97, I wasn't familiar with D&B, but by 2000, and once the file sharing came out, I knew D&B music, but I didn't want to go to the shows, nor did I really chase live music, because the culture of people who went to these shows, they were jerks. They were the snotty, rich, preppy kids in my school, high school and middle school, that would go to these shows. So I was like, how good could the music be if these are the people going? But little did I know that the music was incredibly just on a whole new level. And that's really, you have rock bands who brought all sorts of cultural impact, but and you had the Grateful Dead, but Grateful Dead was hippies. And yes, not everyone who likes the Grateful Dead was a hippie, but Grateful Dead was like a subculture. It was almost like wrestling fans. But D&B actually had cool kids and jerks, and the popular kids used to go to D&B shows. So it's like most of the popular music just wasn't good. It was 3-chord rock or pop. But the fact that the cool popular kids were going to these shows, but the music was good. Carter Beauford is one of the best drummers ever. Leroy Moore is outside of Bradford Marsalis, is probably one of the most influential saxophone players in this jam band / rock, being able to coexist with rock music with such soul. It's Bradford and Leroy. I didn't know that until I went to my first show in 2012. And my first show in 2012 made me actually buy Red Rocks 95. And then I started listening back, and I'm like, I knew that Leroy was talented, but to listen to his live music in 2012, 2013, really fully listening and focusing in for the first time, it changed my love for D&B. It really changed to the point where from 2012 to modern day, I have been to about 22 shows, I think. If I look at, about 22 shows. And I've gone to SPAC, I've gone to the Gorge. I haven't made it out to Deer Creek yet, but I've always been a fan of music. Music has been a part of my life, but D&B from 2012 on has been just the band for me. That just, I love it. I criticize it. I can be very critical. So Bradford Marsalis, Bradford Marsalis is a saxophone player. The Marsalis family from New Orleans is jazz. They're just jazz royalty. So you have Wynton Marsalis. He's a trumpet player. Bradford Marsalis. He actually played with the band in 2015. I saw him with the band. He toured with the band. But they are jazz royalty in New Orleans. And he's just one of the most talented saxophone players. But Leroy, the thing about Bradford, there would be no Leroy without Bradford. Bradford Marsalis played on Sting's, what's that? The album with Englishmen in New York. He played on that album, and Leroy actually learned how to play with Dave by listening to that album. I'm going to have to look it up. Englishmen in New York. But that's how Leroy actually, he listened to Bradford, and Bradford Marsalis has actually played with the Grateful Dead. So he's a soulful brother out of Louisiana who took his jazz to jam band world. And he's played with some other talented I think it's Nothing Like the Sun. Yeah, Nothing Like the Sun. Yeah, so Nothing Like the Sun is from 1987. Englishmen in New York and some of the other stuff. Bradford Marsalis was he played with Sting in a way that was so unique. And at that time in the 80s, he also played with the Grateful Dead. One of the most memorable ones is he played at the Nassau Coliseum, Eyes of the World. But that was so revolutionary to bring on a jazz player who's, he didn't grow up as a deadhead. Bradford Marsalis was into soul and blues and jazz. His father, who just passed away last year, was a leader in the community and taught all of his sons how to play music. But essentially, Leroy listened to that to learn how to play with Dave. To play saxophone in rock or jam band or whatever you want to call it, because D&B isn't really jam band as much as other stuff, because you pretty much know how a jam is going to go. Now, Leroy was very unique in how he played, but D&B, they don't mix it up like the other true jam bands, where you go and listen to a song. Like if you listen to a Sugar Ree from Hartford 77 versus Sugar Ree from Europe 72, or Sugar Ree from 1987, like if you listen to Grateful Dead songs, every one can be completely different. Like I know D&B fans say that, but you can literally listen to, there's a Sugar Ree that's 8 minutes and a Sugar Ree that's 17 minutes. You don't really have that with D&B. Certain songs are just long or they're short, or they got longer over time. But like there's a uniqueness with the jam bands, the way they structure their jams. And it's more jam based than lyrics. For D&B, its lyrics are just as important as the music. And they actually, the quality of the music makes it mainstream, more mainstream. The Grateful Dead only had one song. I think Touch of Grey is like the only charting Billboard Grateful Dead song. But the Grateful Dead are one of the most successful musical acts of all time. They sold out stadiums, but they never made the Billboard charts. D&B made the charts. They aren't really, in theory, a jam band. They do jam. They're a band that jams, but they're not a jam band. But anyway, Bradford Marsalis is the blueprint. Without him, and Leroy listening to him play on in 87 on Sting's album, he probably doesn't, he would be talented, but he wouldn't be able to do what he does with the Dave Matthews Band. But my love for the band the extreme love started in 2012. I had when and that's what I think, the one thing I love about D&B, I put this on Twitter the other day, I love how they were open to file sharing and tape trading. And that's from the Grateful Dead, right? Because I was talking about Metallica is anti. I mean, they literally bankrupt. And, look, file sharing, artists definitely lost money. But file sharing, as much financial bad that it did, it also did good. Because you could have people that could come to your show and never actually buy your physical album. They did it on file. That's why streaming is such a big thing now. They realize that, all right, even if I get pennies for this stream, it's better than getting nothing. And then people will come to my show. If my music is on playlist, they will come to listen. They'll come to my show for that one song on the playlist. But DMB, the thing I love about them is they realized the file sharing. The file sharing was, they weren't opposed to it. And without file sharing, I wouldn't have heard Ants Marching and Satellite as rapidly. I would have probably heard some of it on the radio, but even so, I wasn't listening to like that, the radio that DMB was on. Sometimes I would listen to alternative rock radio or classic rock radio or hip hop radio. So I wouldn't have discovered DMB through the radio. As much as they were on the radio, it really had to be LimeWire, because I heard DMB, allegedly I heard him online. Just in case the fans look. Allegedly. All I know is I got mixed CDs from people. And Ants Marching was on there, Satellite, Two Step. Be careful what I say. But anyway, yeah, so it really, that is why the band grew, is because they gave their music away. And that's what the Grateful Dead did. Just, here's all these tapes. They allowed tapers. And ultimately, that gets you the tour money. You don't sell out if you don't have the word of mouth gospel of the music of DMB. But yeah, in Connecticut here, our amphitheater has a lawn of 25,000 people. I mean, that's bigger than the Gorge. There's more people than the Gorge. There's only like a couple lawns. Alpine, I think, is slightly bigger. There may be another lawn that's up there. But 25,000 people can fit on the lawn in Hartford. And that's what made that venue so special. Even though I wasn't there for those shows, for the D&B shows, I've been to other stuff there. I remember seeing Blink-182 there, and the Project Revolution tour with that was my first major concert. Oh, so that's how you found out about them too. It's through through the files. Okay. But like the Hartford venue, 25,000 people on the lawn makes that the venue. It's very energetic and loud. And again, that's where that tailgate, the football tailgate, comes from, because I haven't been to Alpine, but I've gone to SPAC, and SPAC is pretty, it's dope. Like I've been there twice. On a Friday night show and a Saturday. The tailgate is awesome, but there's nothing like Hartford is just so much bigger. Yeah, 25K. 25K is on the lawn. And the theater, the amphitheater, the seating is like 7,500. So they were getting, for 3 nights in Hartford in the 2000s, they had 90,000 tickets that were sold. 30, 60, 90. Actually a little over 30,000. But I've been on that lawn when it's been full, and it's a sight to see when you have a full lawn in Hartford, and they pack you in there. A lot of the views are pretty bad on the lawn up close, but it's something where the tailgate in Hartford, again, I haven't been everywhere, but going to the Gorge, the tailgate in Hartford is rowdier, louder, crazier. But I actually like the Gorge better. My only experience with the Gorge, and I know it's not I never went to the prime years of the Gorge, and I'm sure I heard it was fuller. But I never went during the big, like the peak D&B years. But even so, Hartford there's nothing like the Hartford, because the Hartford tailgate is literally, it's like a football game. You go to a Alabama football game, a Clemson, a Florida State. It's a mile stretch of area where people are parking and tailgating. It's not like everyone's all along, but there's different lots and stuff for about a mile into Hartford, into downtown Hartford, that various lots you can park in. So you have general parking right by the venue. There's a far lot that you go over a bridge, is about a half a mile from the venue, because there's not enough on-site parking there. If it's a sellout of the lawn, But that's what makes Hartford nice too, is that when you leave Hartford, you can park downtown. I park a mile away from Hartford's venue. So when I leave Hartford, I don't really have any traffic. Now, if you park right next to the venue, even the VIP parking, it's a lot of hard getting out. But Hartford's great because you literally can park a half a mile from the venue and just get right onto the highway on a different exit. But it's definitely it's a pretty interesting setup there. But that's all we have. I mean, like I said, we have pro sports, the Whalers, and then they left. But music is what we have. And the country concerts, other thing that people don't realize about Hartford is people think that Connecticut is just a bunch of people with money. And yes, there's wealthy suburbs. And I mean, I grew up in I grew up in a pretty nice community myself for most of my life. But a lot of Hartford, the country acts are huge in Hartford. Like, they get the biggest crowds. Kenny Chesney sells out Gillette Stadium where the Patriots play every year. Country is huge because we have a lot of rural areas here. Connecticut, you have New York City, it's very populated over there. And Hartford has a little bit of a suburb, but the rest of Connecticut is farmland. So country concerts, they're pretty huge. Country concerts are very, very huge here. And country concerts are the new Dave Matthews Band. They sell out the meadows like D&B used to, where they have the 25,000 people on a lawn. And it's because you have farmers, you have conservative, blue collar type of people that live in. People don't realize that about Connecticut. They exist here in Connecticut. It's not a bunch of liberal, and I don't want to get too into politics, but it's just that there's more population in the cities. But rurally, we have farms. I mean, Farm Aid came to Connecticut, and they pointed out the amount of farms that we have here. We have a lot of dairy farming and some other farming sources. So you have a very, even though we're not in the South, people love, it's almost like how people love the hip hop and wanted to be like 50 Cent, even if they're from the suburbs. People from the rural towns almost want to be country. Like, they are country in the fact they're in rural areas. But D&B Mamas for the summer tour, at the beginning of the video, at the beginning of the stream, I talked about it. There's no shot. Just to put it in perspective, there was an article out this past week. In order for artists to break even, that means pay everyone from the stage techs to the promoters, they have to have 75% capacity. So that's strike one. Strike one is 75% capacity in order to pay everyone. Strike two is the people that actually, like in Florida where it's more open, I don't see Stefan Lassard going to Florida or Texas right now. I don't. I do not see him going to Florida or Texas at all. Because even though the state, we know, D&B, I'm sure you know, you go to Disney World, you got to wear a mask. There's social distancing. There's caps of people. You go to the Florida Keys, and I've been told at the Keys, my cousin lives in Homestead, but I've heard at the Florida Keys, there's restrictions still. The state may be open, but there's still restrictions because ultimately, I work in insurance. Liability is huge. Even if people know that, yes, you're negligent, you didn't wear a mask, you didn't get the vaccine, and you die. Liability for these parks and for these amusement entertainment, it's for Disney, they want to make sure they're in check. For a restaurant, they really don't care. There's not really much liability. You go eat there and that's it. But if they have crowds, Disney World is a target for someone to potentially sue, even though, yes, you walk into these things willingly. Right. So, yeah, you're open, but masks still required. Yeah. And people don't realize that some of the tourist areas, like Miami Beach, I don't know if John's on, but he went to Myrtle Beach, and he was saying this was like in the fall, late summer, early fall, and they were still open. But, but I just think that the states that are open are the states that politically the band doesn't agree with their decisions, whether you agree or disagree. Now, me personally, I believe in precautions, but I think that even though this thing, I've talked to nurses and I've talked to some people who of various viewpoints. To me personally, I'm going to protect me. I'm going to protect my family to the level I feel suited. But I don't think that, I think that states have shown that even with limited restrictions, you're not seeing the death rates and the COVID positive rates are the same. Now, some of that has to do with up here in the Northeast, we're more compact. We have colder air, so you have New York locking down and having more deaths than Florida. But to me, I think that you should allow businesses to do what they want. I think there still should be mask mandates in public areas. If you're not running, if you're not moving fast, like if you're just in a public area in the mall, you should have masks. But I think that if a restaurant wants to open up at 100%, they should be able to at least attempt that, for better or for worse. They may lose business because people don't feel safe there. But I think that businesses should be able to have more choice when it comes to this, now that we have a vaccine for the elderly. And I do, but I'm a little bit of a mix of both theories, because I do understand some of the concerns of variants and the hospitals filling up and all of those measures, especially in the Northeast, where, again, the colder air and the tighter knit areas in New York and in like in parts of Connecticut at the New York border, is very tight living. In lower income areas, they can't afford to be socially distant as much. But I think it's a mix of both. Me personally, although I'm not going to really go places maskless, I still will wear a mask. I don't want to underestimate this, but I think that if people want to go free, that's your choice. That's your own will. I mean, by all means, I don't think it's smart. I think you should look out for those you care, but that's your choice. And I think businesses should be able to open up, because if they want to, at certain levels. But that's just how I feel. I think that, you should allow people to have a little bit more freedom, especially if they are vaccinated. If they don't get the vaccine, that's fine. They don't, if you don't want to get it, you shouldn't have to get it. And it's more on the onus on people. But we'll have to see what happens with this, because we don't know. There's variants. There's a lot that we just don't know about this. But yeah, the tour, if you listen back, D&B Mamas, I really don't see touring of large scales. And I mentioned a festival. There's a festival I posted. It's called the Furnace Fest. And they're saying September 24th to the 26th in southern Alabama that they're going to have this festival for, Anne Berlin, Taking Back Sunday, Under Oath. A lot of the emo and alt rock bands are going to be down there in Alabama. And what they're saying is, this is like one of the few things we're getting an update on. They're saying, look, we're gonna follow CDC guidelines based on what they say in September, and then go from there. So, any other questions? Any other thoughts? If not, I'm gonna end it, and hopefully we can get people in that used to come into the stream. Even if it's just, I really don't care if it's 3 or 4 people. I'm not doing this for just purely on getting 1,000 people or 10,000 people to watch me. I like talking, sharing, and explaining. Anything else, D&B Mamas? Mike D? Any other thoughts, questions, concerns? Do you need the lotto numbers? I'll give you the lotto. I do think that, again, there's going to be opportunities for live music. Another thing that I want to say for next week, though, is I do want to talk about next week this idea of the rock band. Adam Levine talked about the rock band the rock groups don't exist anymore, or groups don't exist. But there's some interesting things just to kind of preview this, but you have Dave Matthews Band. I don't think it's promising, but remember, the thing is, for a lot of the markets, you're going to have to tell people that their tickets are canceled. What would be promising is if there were emails, this week saying we are canceling all tickets, or we're canceling half of the tickets to Dave Matthews Band shows, and here's the new seating chart for your local venue. Tickets are going to be on sale, or if you get a confirmation your ticket's safe, we will reassign you to a seat. Because the reality is SPAC is not going to be 100%. Anything north of the Mason-Dixon line outside of the Midwest is not going to be 100%. Even the Gorge won't be 100%. So you're going to have to reassign people physical seats. You're going to have some sort of seating pattern in the Gorge lawn, or have spray painted boxes. I went to a show for Warren Haynes and Danny Lewis from Government Mule this past summer, and they had six feet boxes, I think it was like 10 by 10 boxes and 6 feet apart, and like on a hill at a farm. You would have to do that at the Gorge because you're not having 100% capacity. And if I saw those actions being done now, I would have more positive. So the thing is, I don't think that the problem is there's Florida. I can see Florida at 75%. I can see Florida at 100%, but depending on what the venues do for liability. The problem is the big markets for DMB. You have your West Palm Beach and you have your Texas has 2 stops, but that's not the biggest. The biggest markets are Deer Creek, out of suburban Indianapolis. So you have Deer Creek, you have Wisconsin/Chicago. I know it's like 2 totally different states, but that area has a DMB market that's huge. So you have Alpine, Summerfest in Milwaukee, or you have Elkhorn, Wisconsin, where Alpine is. Yeah, sorry. So you have Chicago, Elkhorn, Wisconsin, Chicago, Illinois, Elkhorn, Wisconsin, in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. So Deer Creek, the Illinois, Wisconsin area, Hartford, or not Hartford, let's say Hartford. No, New York, upstate New York, and then the Gorge, right? Those are your big markets. Those are your big markets where you have, and then you have the North New England, where you have Guilford, New Hampshire is going to be there, Mansfield, Mass, Hartford/Mohegan, which is Uncasville, Connecticut. These big markets, Indiana may open up, but Illinois is going to be cautious. Democratic governor. Washington, the governor out there, a Democratic governor. So you're not going to have 75% of people by the time, maybe the Gorge, but that's even a stretch. I even think, again, it's going to be incredibly hard because the Gorge really, it has to have, it's an all or nothing. See, like they got to have 3 nights of DMB. They got to have 2 nights of Fish or this or that. They got to have the Sasquatch Festival. Because in order to hire a staff, they really have, it's not just, all right, we're just going to have Labor Day weekend. They have to be making money in the summer or the fall after DMB, which is not possible the way the weather is up there in the Pacific Northwest. So I really don't think that we're going to have, because again, you're not getting the major markets and then the band on top of that. But just the idea, you're not going to, because what you see in professional sports is you see actions actually happening, right? So even that, yeah. So you're saying like plexiglass, nah. That it's just the idea the band doesn't want to go down to Florida. And then even so, it's not just about Florida, it's about you have to, it's just like if you were to go to a job, it's like trying to go to a job versus being a stay-at-home parent. If the job doesn't bring in a certain amount of days or revenue, then sometimes for certain families, it's better to have one of the parents stay at home and be a stay-at-home parent because you got to pay for daycare. So it's like in order for certain people to go to work, and I've had babysitters in my life that either work part-time or just didn't work at all because they had 3 kids and they would babysit me. My parents were both working in corporate America my whole life, so I always had to have daycare. But I remember like one of my babysitters, it didn't make sense for her to go to work part-time because at getting X amount, and then she has to be away from her kids for a part-time job, to pay for daycare is not worth it. It was better off having her husband work his good job and her to work at home because it's cheaper in home. I mean, being a homemaker is not an easy. I have respect for it. My grandmother did that for most of her life and ended up cleaning houses on the side as my mom's siblings got older. But that's exactly what these bands are looking at. And they don't need the money. That's the thing is, the artists who are desperate for money, the comedians who make money from touring, they are the ones that are desperate. They're the ones that are on, you're seeing them tour, but DMB doesn't need the money. And they don't want to hire a road crew. They'd rather have that road crew collect unemployment, find other ways to make money for them. Because you have expenses for the tour, but part of what happens when you make a profit on 20 shows or 30 shows, that extra profit from each show allows for people to be paid. But when if you only have a surplus from 5 or 6 shows in the southern area, it's not worth it. And then it's better for some of the crew to take other jobs that's full-time for a smaller scale band than to take 4 or 5 DMB shows. So it's really an all or nothing. All or nothing at all. Da, 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 na, 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 na. That's really what it is. It's an all or nothing. You could scrap like 2 or 3 dates, but you can't scrap Deer Creek and SPAC and the Gore. You can't have a DMB tour and just cut all those dates. It's really going to be an all or nothing. And the band has to commit to it. Because even with everything going on, there's variance. The crew still has to go through these cities, and again, DMB and other bands are conscious. They're very, very, very conscious of that. But yeah, next week I do want to talk about who's going to be the next DMB, because what you have now is you have a lot of bands who are getting older. Now you have pop stars. I think one of the things you have pop stars, and you have people that go on American Idol like a Philip Phillips, although Philip Phillips his popularity has waned off a little bit. But you have pop stars like Shawn Mendes and Charlie Puth that are influenced by the John Mayers and Dave Matthews, and they have a big crowd, but they're really pop. One of the things we want to talk about next week is what's going to happen with the big stage of an amphitheater once DMB stops touring, once Fish stops touring, now John Mayer's still going to be touring. I say that John Mayer's in his 2004 DMB era. He has another, and the thing is, because he's a solo act, he can tour for so much longer. Oh, the concert bubbles, yeah. I saw that article on that, yeah. But speaking of, I think what's going to happen, let's just say COVID never happened. What acts after DMB was to stop touring are going to be able to fill up an arena or amphitheater that do what DMB does? Most of the people that do what DMB does are in mid-tier venues, and we're going to look at that and talk about that. And this is something that is inspired by Copperpot, who who's an awesome DMB archivist, expert extraordinaire. He did bring this up about DMB not having openers, and how that helped propel certain acts, and how it's a missing thing. But that's the reality. People are like, rock and roll is not dead. We have this, this, and this. Yeah, we do, but they're not on the stages that were as big as, there were rock stars that sold out stadiums. Now you're lucky to sell out an arena, even at the top of the rock game. There's a lot of festivals where you get 100,000 people, but you're just another lineup, checking the lineup. But the Rolling Stones sold out stadiums. They still do. And there's no one really falling behind that. But that's all I'm going to do for tonight. Thank you guys for tuning in. Hopefully we can get more people out, and people see that. If you see this replay, if you made it this far, salute, because this is an hour of just rambling. But 9, I'm hoping for 9 o'clock Central Time. Maybe we'll move it up to 9 o'clock Eastern. Maybe we'll move it up to Central Time, 10 Eastern, 9 Central. But since we're at home, I might as well talk and interact, and I love hearing from you guys and feeding off the questions you guys have. I'm going to end this stream. It's your boy ConcertVids34, Instagram, YouTube, Twitter, ConcertVids34, ConcertVids 34. Thank you guys for tuning in. Peace.